In this episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks, a Titan in RTX, AMD Navi rumors, Samsung's next Galaxy, Intel coming up short, and alien beast machines, and more. Next. Welcome back to another episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks, the podcast where we talk about lots of things tech, lots of things computing, and why Facebook is broke. Guys, why is Facebook broke? Call up Zuckerberg and fix this.
Screw him.
I was waiting for it. I'm like, come on, Marco, where is it? Where is it?
You can't get it up.
Oh, yes, that seems to be the case. The site is literally down, so you would conclude that would be the issue. Yes, Facebook can't get it up. Wow. Okay, Chris is feeling a little randy today. Chris, how you doing there in the scenic state of Maine?
Sleep deprived. I was up for 30 hours straight dealing with a campus power outage.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you work in the campus police department, or
yeah?
What campus are we speaking of?
University of Maine. So we had some campus power issues, and I have to fire up the tech equipment in the emergency operations. So it's a nice long Monday and a Tuesday.
Gotcha. So you're working on little rest and beer, which helps for conscious stream of thought, right? Yeah. Excellent, Marco. How you doing today? How's life in the Big Apple of Connecticut, which is not really the Big Apple?
Life is good. A little bit of a crazy day. I have to warn everybody watching, all few of you, that I'm on daddy duty while I'm shooting this podcast. So there is a high probability of interruptions from little cute girls and potentially a puppy tonight. Have an article to launch tomorrow morning that I'm only about halfway done writing. So I'm good, but a little bit stressed and waiting for the interruptions to come charging into my office.
We will welcome those interruptions and feed them cake and maybe beer. No, maybe not beer, just the cake.
No cake. It's almost bedtime.
That's it. I'm the bad uncle, dude. I just feed him the cake.
You're the Bill Cosby.
Yeah. Oh, don't say that. That used to be funny. That's not funny anymore. Oh, geez. Well, it's easy to be the bad uncle because you can always hand them back when you're done having the fun. But we're not here to talk about children, and we might if they happen on camera, or uncles even. But we're here to talk tech, and there's lots of stuff going on. And Marco's been looking at stuff, and Chris has been looking at stuff, and I've been looking at stuff. So between the three of us, we've got stuff to look at. There you go. But let's dive into the headlines and some interesting stuff that's been bubbling through not only the rumor mill, but the review mill as it goes at HotHardware.com. Marco's been taking a look at Nvidia's Titan, believe it or not, Titan RTX. Titan RTX review, Pro-Viz compute and gaming beast. This is Nvidia's Turing in one of its most full-fat implementations, but maybe not the most full fat, right, Marco? Tell us about it.
Well, I mean, in terms of the GPU, it is a fully enabled TU102 GPU. So if you look at the specs of a GeForce RTX 2080 Ti, the Titan RTX actually has more cores, more texture units, more ROPs. It's the full implementation of the GPU. It also has a massive 24 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory on board. The only more powerful Turing-based cards are the Quadros, and there's a Quadro RTX 8000 with 48 gigs of memory that's not quite released yet. That's the real monster in the Turing lineup. But in terms of, I don't want to call this a consumer card. Technically, I guess it's a consumer card. A prosumer is probably the best term. Nvidia. So the Titan RTX is kind of funny. When it was first announced, lots of the super cynical guys in the tech journalism scene, kind of crapping all over. It's not worth it for gamers. Yada yada. it's $1,000 more than a 2080 Ti, and it's only a little bit faster. Well, yeah, because NVIDIA is not targeting gamers with this, and that's usually the case with all Titans. So that was, for effect. Now, this guy's a $2,500 GPU, super fast, technically the fastest gaming GPU in NVIDIA's lineup right now. If you look through our numbers, you're going to see it's about 5 to 10% faster than a 2080 Ti, virtually across the board. But where the Titan RTX sort of shines is it's kind of a cross between a consumer card and a pro card. If you look at like the Pro Viz stuff in, let's say, spec view perf numbers, there's a couple of instances where a 2080 Ti gets like 28 frames per second, where a Titan RTX gets a few hundred frames per second. And that's mostly because of the driver differences. Some of the professional applications, there's driver certifications necessary to run them at full speed, whether this is an artificial limitation NVIDIA puts on the cards, what have you. But you do get higher performance in some of these professional applications. You also have this massive 24 gig frame buffer. So if you're like a data scientist or dipping your toes in AI and deep learning, and you have these massive data sets that would overflow the 11 gigs on a 2080 Ti, then that 24 gigs is a huge selling point. And guys in that space, they don't really care about spending an extra grand or two. I know it's crazy to think about, but it is what it is. So the Titan RTX ends up being a killer gaming card just because it's so fast. Not necessarily a killer gaming card in terms of value, but yes, in terms of performance. Now, this is weird to say about a $2,500 graphics card, but in terms of value versus a pro card, it actually has that big value proposition, because this a lower spec RTX Quadro RTX 6000 is about the same price. I believe I'm probably mixing up model numbers here. RTX, is it the 7000? That's like $1,000 more. Let me look this up because I don't want to get the model numbers wrong. Give me just 1 second. I don't have it all committed to memory just yet. So Titan V, which is slower, is still a $3,600 card. Quadro RTX 5000 is about the same price and has lower specs than this. Quadro RTX 6000 and the crazy high-end RTX 8000 aren't really released, but the 6000 has an MSRP of $4,000. So, it's a good $1,500 less than one of those. So it's kind of this in-between card that's an absolute beast, has this gorgeous gold color scheme. But it's this weird card, doesn't sort of fit in any one category.
It's wild to think that a card that's not a pro graphics card is released with a 24 gig frame buffer, GDDR6 frame buffer. It's massive. Well, let me ask you. So obviously this thing is prosumer. I think it's more, super creator / as you mentioned, workstation professional, machine learning AI professional, heavy duty stuff. Can you enable this thing with Quadro certified drivers? Will it take those and handle the Pro Viz workload with that kind of drivers, or does NVIDIA not bequeath that upon you because you don't have a Quadro?
So yes and no. It's not the Quadro driver, right? So if you go to NVIDIA site, you have GeForce drivers, you have Titan drivers, you have Tesla drivers, you have Quadro drivers. The Quadro drivers have received the certification and are faster in some of the apps, like a Pascal-based P6000, which has lower specs basically across the board, does win in some spec view perf tests. That's really the only spot where it pulled ahead of this. So it's not this exact driver. They had the same version numbers, but it's not the exact driver.
Yeah.
However, it does have more features enabled than the consumer driver, so it was much better than the GeForce. So like it's still that same sort of scenario where it's kind of in between, but killer performance. It's just such a fast card. It can brute force its way through a lot of workloads.
Yeah, and it games pretty well. But you're really talking about diminishing returns. You're talking about a 10% advantage over a 2080 Ti, right? For over $1,000 more, yeah, for double the price, right? Yeah,
almost, yeah. You're talking a 5 to 10% performance advantage for like what is it, like a 70% price increase. 2080 Ti's, the overclocked ones are like $1,200 still. So no, I guess it is. I guess it is 100% price increase. 2,500, 1,200, $2,500. So yeah, like if you're a gamer, the value is not there. The performance is there. If you're rich and $2,500 doesn't mean anything to you, it's the fastest gaming card there is. However, if you care about value, 2080 Ti, even at $1,200-$1,300 is a better value than this card. But even that, most people aren't spending that kind of money on a gaming GPU either.
What about 4K? What about 4K gaming? So, dial up everything so that you're just pegging that frame buffer as hard as you can. Max texture, max, image quality, and then 4K res. Does it spread it to spread its legs? Listen to me, stretch its legs a little better.
Not really. It's the best card in 4K gaming because it's so powerful. Like for example, in Middle Earth, not the most taxing title, it almost hits 80 frames per second. A 2080 Ti is at like 72 frames per second. In something like Far Cry 5, at 4K ultra quality, the highest quality preset, similar, 78 frames per second versus 72. So it's perfectly capable gamer at 4K. However, even the 11 gigs on the 2080 Ti is more than enough, so that extra frame buffer doesn't really matter at 4K. If you were running maybe 3 4K displays, but then it's not really hitting playable frame rates at that point. So that extra frame buffer is really for pro graphics engineering kind of workloads, GPU rendering workloads that can use it. If you can utilize that 24 gigs, it's going to be massively faster than the 2080 Ti, because the 2080 Ti is going to have to swap from system memory, and that's just kills performance. That's the advantage of the Titan RTX. That's the person Nvidia is targeting with the card. So
big data set that needs a big frame buffer like that. Chris, what's your take on this thing?
Definitely is going to have a lot to do with can you use the memory on it. Performance wise, people are going to game with it. We know this is going to happen. It's going to make people mad, but people are going to blow the money, and not my money, not my problem, but it'll make some cool systems.
Yeah, I wonder if this is a good card, Marco. I could see, frankly, game devs working with very large render models with, certainly DLS. Well, not DLSS. Well, the RT cores. Excuse me, the tensor cores, perhaps as well. But the ray tracing cores as well for development, and having that large frame buffer with ray tracing cores, a large configuration of ray tracing cores as well, has more ray tracing cores enabled as well, right? Than a 2080 Ti. Is that correct?
More tensor cores, more RT core. No, more tensor cores, more RT cores, more CUDA cores, more texture units, more ROPs. It's more and more across the board. It's I think it's 1 or 2 SMs different than a 2080 Ti. It's not massive, but it's an upgrade across the board.
Reminds me of a 70s disco song. More and more and more. Who was that? Deborah Harry? Something like that?
Blondie? I don't remember.
Yeah, Blondie. Yeah, Deborah Harry. Yeah. Well, that's cool. I mean, it's a wild beast for sure. And the gold is best. Got to have gold, right?
Exactly.
But folks that are looking to game on it, don't knock it, because it's kind of not for you, right? Unless you're a baller gamer.
Lots of guys jumped all over it saying, "Oh, what a dumb release! What a dumb release!" But it's like, these Halo Titan cards have existed for future generations. Now, Nvidia, the original Titan, the first one, was targeted at gamers. It was exorbitantly priced, but not like this one. Mm-hmm. And then they kind of went back and forth. Like there's the Star Wars edition Titan XP, obviously targeted at gamers. But then there was a Titan V, not targeted at gamers, and now so there's confusion. So I can understand why people jumped all over it. But if you go to look at NVIDIA's landing page for Titan RTX, the word game doesn't appear. Gaming doesn't appear on the page. It talks about data scientists, about huge content creation workloads. There's not a picture of a game. There's no mention of gaming. It just happens to be based on the most powerful GPU in their lineup, so it's also the fastest gaming GPU. But you pay for it.
Yeah. I think no matter how you slice it, NVIDIA can enable a configuration that's pretty. It's whatever NVIDIA can do to enable that GPU with the most amount of horsepower, with ridiculous amount of frame buffer, what have you. Because they can build it, they did. Call it what you like. If you don't want to call it a gaming card, fine. I don't think they care.
As long as you call them.
Yeah, right. As long as you buy a few. Jensen will appreciate it, I'm sure. All right, well, let's move on to something from the folks at AMD that's bouncing around the rumor mill. It's bubbling up. AMD Radeon Navi rumors, benchmarks, and potential launch date. Chris, what do you know? Can you tell us something that's remotely true?
It's going to be built on 7 nanometer. We know that much.
There you go.
So, yeah, rumors have kind of been coming out more lately, looking at benchmarks in particular, compared to some of the other AMD cards. So they were picked up by, I want to get his name here, Reddit user Dylan522p. Sorry, I want to give credit.
Very specific, yes.
Yes. Found the benchmark listings for an AMD 66AF:F1, which is believed to be an upcoming Navi card. It's not confirmed, but it seems to foot the bill. So what we're seeing with this 66AF:F1 card is that it has 20 compute units, which is going to give us 128 stream processors. And that puts it somewhere in mid-range territory, definitely upper mid-range, something like a 1080 or maybe a 2070 in performance kind of profile. But not going to be knocking down on the Titan RTX from the looks of what we're seeing here, at least. It's also possible that this could actually be an upcoming Vega card, Vega 20 or something like that. So it's a lot of rumors at this point, but what we're seeing as far as performance goes is it is definitely an uptick over the 580, 580X. So maybe 20% better frame rates in the couple of game listings that we see from it there. Relative to the Vega cards, the 56 and the 64, it isn't performing that as strongly as those in most of the tests. So that's mostly in the professional workload. So we're definitely looking at that upper mid-range solid gaming kind of look from this.
Yeah. Interesting thing. I mean, I'm looking through this post now. I don't know if you can put this up on the screen, John, but it's pretty cryptic, as these things can be, and certainly if you're looking at this, take it with a grain of salt, because even if it is the real deal, it's way early. So drivers aren't mature, silicon's not mature. This thing just maybe leaked out in some test bench configuration. Who knows? Maybe some partner.
That's also comparing that particular test that we're showing right there is comparing DirectX and OpenGL, so it's not even an apples to apples test.
Right. Yeah. Good point. Good catch there, Marco. Jeez.
A lot remains to be seen with it. There's also rumors from WCCF Tech that it's expected about a month after the Ryzen 3000 processors launch, and those are probably expected at Computex. So that would push the Navi launch towards Gamescom or SIGGRAPH or something in that time frame. So we expect it is coming. Whether these benchmarks are accurate or not is anyone's guess, of course. But
yeah,
it's good to see AMD still chugging.
Yeah, Gamescom or SIGGRAPH timeframe would put it about what? Is that August-ish? I think.
Uh,
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah.
Or thereabouts, July, August, and that would line up well if it arrives in time for the Q4 holiday shopping season. So that would be a good targeted theory, I guess, window for it to be released.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I mean it's good to see some rumblings out there. I think we're all waiting for something from AMD that will blow our mind, that will say, hey, guess who's back in, going toe to toe with the very high end. Marco, do you have hope for Navi? I know you've peeled back the onion on Radeon 7 and got under the hood with that thing in deep. Are you in hope of Navi's promise for next generation architecture?
In terms of power and feature set, yes. The performance numbers are all over the map. While you guys were talking, I'm looking it up right now. I'm checking out the RX 480 launch and seeing how that compared to the rest of the lineup. If you remember, the rumors were kind of the same before the first Polaris came. It was, this is going to be a mainstream card. It's going to target the meat of the market, the high volume sales, and it's only going to be a few percentage points faster than the previous gen. So I'm looking at the RX 480 now, and it was about, so I'm going to 30% fast. The 4 gig card is about 30% faster than an R9 380X. The 8 gig card was a couple percentage points faster than that. So if we look now at like an RX 590 and we bump that up 30%, then Navi, if it follows the same trend where AMD launches a mainstream card that's roughly 30% faster than their current top end mainstream card, then Navi doesn't catch the Vega 56 or Vega 64. That's supremely unexciting to me in light of what Nvidia is doing. So there's more Nvidia news coming too. We see the RTX 2080 outpacing a 1080. So, basically, if Navi launches and it follows a similar trend to Polaris, AMD is going to compete with Nvidia's $250 cards, $220 cards, that range. I guess that's good in terms of the meat of the market, but gamers have this new card that performs lower than cards that have been for sale for a couple of years, and that's unexciting unless they get really aggressive on pricing. If Navi comes and it's nearly Vega 64 class performance, but it's sub $200, that's awesome. But I'm not.
Right.
The rumors are all over the map, so we're speculating. I have no idea, but yeah, I don't know. I know that the architecture. I'm confident that the architecture will be bleeding edge and have some really cool features. All depends on where performance lands. I'm hoping. Now, Lisa Su has said they're confident in where it's going to compete, and they're saying, she has said Navi will compete with Turing. Now, whether that's first gen Navi or the follow-up remains to be seen, but she did say it. And AMD has been pulling off these big surprises lately. Yeah. Things are happening that people are saying weren't going to happen, and then it happens. So who knows?
Yeah. It's a fascinating time. I think AMD's getting more resources at their disposal as well, to just even simple stuff like ringing out silicon and validation and all that good stuff that takes a lot of money. And so these days, we had an article we ran not too long ago about how it looks like, based on some of the early numbers, that they're beginning to chip away at Intel's server market share. However small percentage that may be, any bit that they chip away is something and significant, and helps the bottom line and contributes to additional resources to develop lots of other things, new silicon. It'll be interesting to watch, and we can only hope, right? And then, quickly following beyond that, it's, what are the guys at Intel doing? 2020 is going to come quick, right? As we get into that Navi launch time frame, theoretically second half of this year sometime, who knows? That's what we're getting rumblings for. You start approaching 2020, and Intel comes into the picture, at least in terms of what they've projected, what they've targeted to deliver a discrete graphics product to the market. So, so there.
You know what's funny though? Like, if you listen to Intel's messaging so far, and let's say the rumors of Navi are true, and it's strictly the first wave is mainstream, and it's not until late 2020 that there's a high-end variant. That means both Intel with a brand new architecture and AMD with their newest architecture are competing with literally like the smaller, lower end Turing GPUs that Nvidia's been already selling for months and months. And we're not sure what's going to happen on the ray tracing front. If that next wave of cards comes and Turing remains the only GPU with dedicated cores to hardware accelerate ray tracing, man, what a win for Nvidia, because they can do whatever they want. You know, in terms of pricing, they can turn the screws and drop the price on an RTX 2060, maybe release an RTX 2050. I don't know, but it just seems like Nvidia would be holding all the cards. So I'm hoping Intel and AMD pull some cool stuff out of the hat.
And that's an interesting observation. And you've touched on something that AMD CEO Lisa Su has said is definitely in their future and that they are committed to, and that's ray tracing. So she went on record, you know, it's not like we get divided camps and ray tracing is not going to be a thing. It's a thing. We all know it's a thing. If you've been around the graphic space for any period of time, everybody's understood that ray tracing's sort of the holy grail, and real-time ray tracing is, you know, historically used to be a pipe dream, and it's still only partial real-time ray tracing, right? Hybrid, rasterized, and ray tracing together is what these latest game engines are showing on NVIDIA's Turing, games like Battlefield 5 and Metro Exodus. Chris, you gonna bet on a horse? You gonna pick AMD, Intel, or Nvidia in 2020?
Well, as soon as indie games pick up ray tracing, it's gonna go crazy. So whoever's promoting the best product at that time, I think, is gonna run away with it. Right now, that certainly looks like Nvidia until we can see what AMD or Intel might have to offer on that front. But I'm still not sold on the ray tracing for AAA games because of the performance impact more than anything. You know, ray tracing is great, but if you're not above 60 FPS, you're not going to want it. Whereas the lower intensity games can definitely do a lot with it. So I think demand is going to rise as we go. As far as the traditional GPU performance side of things, that's always just a strictly economic decision for most people. Whoever's delivering the best performance at the best price point, that's within your budget, you're going to go with. There's certainly a lot of AMD or NVIDIA fanboys, but I don't think that's most of the market. You know, I'm going to look at whatever the best option is for my money and for my needs. So there is always going to be a race to the bottom there in pricing. So we'll see.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting thing to watch. I think Marco touched on something that's, you know, important, and that's the fact that NVIDIA is the incumbent when it comes to things like ray tracing. You know, DLSS and Tensor Cores making use of machine learning for image post-processing acceleration is something that's an NVIDIA thing. And, you know, whether or not that takes on and other people follow a similar technology track, other manufacturers, other GPU manufacturers follow a similar technology track, that remains to be seen. But ray tracing seems like it's here, and it's a thing, and it's going to be supported by the industry, and there's critical mass behind it. And so Marco makes a good point. You know, they're out, they've got it, they've developed it, and it's in silicon, it's in software and drivers, and all of that maturity curve is happening now for NVIDIA, and the other folks they're going to be playing catch up on that. Not that they can't do it, but you know, it'll be you know, close to second generation NVIDIA by the time we get there. And you have to give them kudos. They're an impressive company for pulling that off as early as they did. And you know, whether you're a fanboy for Team Red or Team Green, It's here. It's still something that is not available in any other graphics product. End of story, right? Marco, am I being too generous?
No, I mean you're not. I agree with both of you guys. Chris is saying if the ray tracing is not giving acceptable performance, maybe you're not going to turn it on. But on the other hand, it's there and it's continually being improved. But over and above that, like even if you go look at the Titan RTX review that I just put up, just forget the RTX is in there, but look at the graphs and look where Vega and RX 590 fall. You know what? Even just go look at the 1660 Ti review and look where Vega 64 and RX 590 fall. And then look at the really long bar charts for 2060, RTX 2070, RTX 2080. Not even to mention 2080 Ti or Titan RTX. And it's like Nvidia just has so much room to play, and they're making money hand over fist right now. They're just in such a strong position that Intel and AMD really need to execute and really need to be aggressive on pricing to keep the excitement in their camp. Nvidia is just in a really strong position is what it is right now.
Yeah. No, I would agree. It's an interesting thing to watch, and we'll see what Intel can do to compete, and we'll see what AMD can do to compete. I mean, you have to admit, Lisa Su and her leadership over there has quite literally turned that company around. I mean, hard, 180 CPU competitiveness, and in some cases leadership. I would even argue on the high core count stuff. Certainly for the desktop, maybe a little bit, of a different dynamic in the data center, but high core count desktop, I mean, there's some leadership there. So that's impressive when you think about competing with Chipzilla on their home turf. So yeah, you never know. It'll be interesting to watch what Navi can do. Let's move on to some mobile stuff. And I'll talk about a little something I've been pocketing as my daily driver just to try and live with it. Honestly, I don't do this often. I tend to stick with, a steady Eddie, reliable that I know is going to work, because when I'm on the road, stuff needs to not break and needs to deliver. But I've actually dropped my SIM into the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus, and I am now living with that. So I posted a review of that Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus review, 10th generation Android greatness. Now, this phone, in my opinion, is one of the best Android phones on the market currently, potentially the best, depending on your specific use case, needs, what have you. If you look at a premium device that starts at, on the low end, I think it's I think the S10 is somewhere around $799, or maybe it's the S10e. The phone I'm looking at here is $1,000 phone in a standard configuration, 8 gig of RAM, 128 gigs of storage. It is not cheap. So as far as premium flagship phones go, this is probably, I think, one of the best iterations of an Android experience you can get currently. It has a 6.4-inch curved dynamic AMOLED display, 3040 by 1440 WQHD plus resolution, and it is an HDR10 plus compatible or compliant display, the Infinity O display, as Samsung calls it. And that display, I think, alone, when you talk about a device that is, the display is so much of the experience, I think that display alone is what puts this handset head and tails above the rest in the market. It's not cheap. It's $1,000 phone. I mean, let's face it, Apple's got plenty of $1,000 phones these days. We're all not kind of comfortable with this $1,000 bar that we have to strive for to get the most premium experience. But the Infinity O display, John just showed you. John, maybe you can put that back up. This is actually it right here. This is the Samsung Galaxy S10. John's showing it on the screen now too. She's talking to me. Bixby was talking to me. But it's super bright. It has a very thin bezel. Try not to get glare. That's a little bit better, but man, is this thing bright. So it's blowing out the camera. And then you can see up top, there's the Infinity O punch out for the dual camera array. So this has a front facing selfie cam with a secondary depth sensing camera for things like portrait mode selfies, which actually does a really nice job of grabbing selfies with that depth effect. That display is fabulous. On board, this is the first Snapdragon 855 processor based phone that we have tested that's in retail form. There are others coming soon. Marco, I think you've got one from LG. It performs. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 30% faster, depending on whether you're talking CPU or GPU tests, and just feeling, the phone, the experience, super responsive. I actually have, maybe this is a slightly better. Yeah, really not. I have the Prism White build. And so this is a beautiful finish on the back. It is all glass and certainly, machined, not machined, but polished steel around the edges, curved. And on bottom, you've got a headphone jack and a USB-C port. Yes, that headphone jack is there. Thank you, Samsung. Also on board, wireless charging and wireless charge and share. Now, Samsung also released a pair of wireless buds, Galaxy buds, to go with this. Drop them right on top of the phone, and you will charge wirelessly from the phone to your Galaxy buds. So tons of features. What's also very impressive about this device is the rear camera array. So you've got 3 cameras. I'll try and not to glare the webcam here. You've got 3 cameras here. You've got a standard aspect, a wide aspect, and then a super wide or ultra wide. I think it's 123 degree aspect or angle, wide angle lens. So it absolutely has, some really great shot potential to capture lots of different, basically whatever the human eye can see, this thing can capture, because it's got that I think 120 degrees is roughly the angle of the human eye that you can perceive in your vision without looking in your periphery. And so this will grab that, and it makes a big difference. I actually, in my review, I don't know, John, if you can get to the camera page, it's actually page 3. Yes. I actually had a 70, right when I was reviewing this thing, we had a winter storm blow through, and I had a 75-foot white pine drop in my yard, in my front yard. And so I went out and I took the camera, and I couldn't, with a standard phone, I literally couldn't get that whole tree into the shot. And with this camera, I was able to, hit the wide angle and bang, and it doesn't warp anything. There you go. There's the tree. That thing is leaning over at a 45-degree angle. It's a beast. It actually looks smaller on that picture than it is in person. It's massive, and that tree, you can't shoot it unless you get a wide angle lens. So that's just a good example for size. So it's, this phone's really got some pretty impressive features. Great camera. I would say competitive with the Pixel. If you're not the type to, with the Pixel 3, if you're not the type to enjoy heavily saturated, colorful shots, certainly Samsung has always tended to produce shots that are a little bit heavy on saturation and a little bit bright. I like that personally. Folks tend to like the muted, a little bit more accurate, perhaps, colors of the Pixel 3 or the Pixel 2. Historically, Google's Pixels have shot. But the camera's awesome, performance is awesome, build quality is amazing, display is the best. And I'm not the only one that thinks that. DisplayMate rated it like A+, best smartphone display, period. It is really an impressive phone. Now, and then I'll let you guys chime in, because I know I've been yapping, but I'm living with it now. And what I'm used to in terms of software, and this is where the rubber meets the road for me personally, I think the average mainstream user is going to get along fine with this thing. If you're not an Android purist, and I have become an Android purist snot over the past couple of iterations based on the fact that I've been running a OnePlus 6, and OnePlus, I think, spoils most Android users that have experienced the OnePlus phone. because they do a really good job with the Oxygen OS of leaving Android as pure as possible and only giving you a couple of hooks here and there that, take advantages of the features of the phones. Some of the things on a OnePlus, for example, are it has a actual switch to go, a mechanical switch for simple stuff. It used to be on old phones. Simple switch to put in do not disturb mode. Little things like that. They just do really well, and it's super crisp, mostly pure Android. This is Samsung's One UI. It's way better than previous generation Samsung software packages, as far as I'm concerned. I'm still getting used to it. I want to get more used to it, and I'm trying to live with it, and I'm trying to get over my Android pure snottiness, but I'm not quite there yet. I'm going to give it a couple more weeks. It's an impressive device. What do you guys think, Marco? I know you've kicked around and you've been living on a Galaxy Note, I believe. What are your thoughts these days on the subject of Samsung software and the build of their phones?
So the software on the current gen phones is definitely way better than the old ones. I wrote an article years ago about bit rot on Android, and I think that was during the S3 or S4 generation, and I got attacked like crazy. People said I was nuts, but everybody out there knows on those older phones, and even still some modern phones, you ride them hard for a couple of years, you need to do a factory reset to clear that software out and get it to run well. Now, it seems like the newer phones are much less prone to that. The Note 8 that I'm rocking right now, I have not touched it in terms of resetting it or uninstalling apps or doing anything wacky like that since the day I set it up. So it's been, I guess like a year and a half, maybe 2 years. It's got to be like at least a year and a half, and it's perfect. I'm used to the Samsung software, so you will most likely just get familiar with the slight changes that Samsung has made and end up loving it because that phone is so fast with such a good camera and screen. So yeah, I'm sure if I had an S10 in hand, I would have no issues carrying it daily.
Yeah. And battery life wise, 4,100 milliamp hour battery. It scored the second longest battery life score that we've tested on any Android phone to date. It's just behind the Note 9. I think the Note 9 had a little bit more efficiency going on with the Snapdragon 845 platform, and it also has a 4,100 milliamp hour battery. Different display too. Note 9 is not HDR plus. This is an HDR plus display. It might be, I think it's significantly brighter depending on how you have it dialed in, although we can calibrate the displays to a specific nits or lux setting of brightness so that all things are equal. So power draws are different characteristics in the platforms. But killer battery life as well. Chris, would you dare step into the next Galaxy? Because I know you're a Moto fan. You're a Hello Moto guy, right?
Yeah, well, Motorola is kind of disappearing from relevancy more than I'd like. So I'm actually on the Pixel 3 now, but still got the stock Android pure everything that I love about it. So it's really hard for me to use anything else. My work phone is a Galaxy S8, and it's okay, but I still don't like the UI much compared to what stock Android offers. And I know there's definitely improvements from what I've seen with the S10s, but stock Android's so good. It's hard to want any changes to that. I still think the biggest issue with the Galaxies and even the Pixel, if I hadn't picked it up for several hundred off, is the price. $1,000 is a lot to ask for a phone, no matter how good it is, and that's something that OnePlus gets right with. $550 for the OnePlus 6T.
Yeah.
For something that you get, so you're either signing up for 2 payments or you're just dropping $1,000 on it outright, and then in 6 to 8 weeks you drop it, shatter it. I don't know. It's too fragile to throw that kind of money at it.
Yeah. I will say something about the Galaxy S10 that I'm a little bit disappointed in, and this I'm going to actually update the review because this happened just the other day. This phone actually, I think it was the S10, not the S10 Plus, passed some crazy, YouTube drop test that was done, and just got the heck beat out of it and didn't crack, and stood up to some serious abuse. However, my phone, the Galaxy S10 Plus, has a real serious gouge. Like, it's the kind of gouge that you get in your car and you go, can my fingernail feel that? Yeah, I can. Oh crap, I can't buff out that thing. so that's what I've got in the back of the phone. And I don't know. I honestly don't know how I did it because I wasn't careless with it. I have a new a case for it now, a clear bumper case, clear sleeve. But like literally, I have no idea how that happened. Maybe I had a set of keys in my pocket. Maybe it was something like that, but it was not a drop. It was not something. I was careful with it. I've never like tossed it on a table. This is a brand new phone, and I'm still working with it, and I'm careful with my stuff when it comes to that. This is important equipment. It's the livelihood here, so to speak. It's not just a phone. So yeah, I was careful, and I scratched this thing, and I was really freaking annoyed by that. So there's a beautiful finish back here, but get a case on it because I scratched it and I wasn't trying at all. I was being careful not to. So I don't know. I was a little disappointed there, but it's one of those things where they put this. It looks like they put a high gloss seal over it, sort of a lacquer. It really resists fingerprints nicely. It's a beautiful looking phone. But you gotta get a case on it on the back because you will scratch it up. You might not break it. It might be pretty robust. It took a serious drop test, but scratches ain't cool. So yeah, Marco, I don't know. I like it. I'm living on it, and we shall see. I might be converted. It's impressive. Samsung, you got to hand it to them. They're giving Apple a run for their money, and this thing actually. Word is pre-orders. I know they're just starting to ship now. Pre-orders are going gangbusters, and it's like one of the biggest Galaxy launches pre-order wise to date. So we'll see what happens. Any other thoughts before we move on that?
I think we covered it.
I won't drone anymore. Let's talk about real quick. Let's talk about Intel chip shortages, and talk about what could impact the market. Intel CPU shortages reportedly may get worse through Q2 2019. What do we think this means for the market? What do we think this means for pricing, to availability, to the competition? Who could benefit? Maybe AMD can pull out a little bit of a win here based on this shortcoming of Intel. Chris, what do you know? What are we hearing about this, and why do we think Intel CPU shortages continue?
Yeah, so obviously the shortage isn't new. It's been going for, I don't know, at least 6-8 months now, where they've had serious productivity drop off, not meeting demand. Part of it is probably on just the manufacturing side, that getting to 10 nanometer barrier and all of that. But here it looks like, while we've generally seen the Core i5 Coffee Lake has been kind of taking the brunt of the supply slack, and in the most demand not able to meet expectations there. The lower end chips are actually going to be more in demand, because it's, as we said, Chromebook season. So it's the time of year where you just get a ton of Chromebook sales in anticipation for school and other things, and which use the lower end Intel chips. And then also the i3s are probably going to surpass the i5s in terms of supply shortage. So definitely a lot of room for AMD to step in and take some market share. We're seeing some manufacturers start to prioritize the AMD chips in their designs, in some cases. So, it's an interesting shakeup to the market that's not strictly a performance battle. It's literally, you got to get the chips out to be sold, or you're going to lose share there.
Yeah. No, I think it's an interesting dynamic that Intel hasn't had to worry about for a while. They've actually got some competition, and we've actually heard from multiple OEMs in the mobile space, and even in the desktop space. You start seeing AMD SKUs becoming more widely available, more, generally available across different model families of products than, before, that, which were, sort of specific families had an AMD option. Now it's tended to be more widespread. Marco has a theory on this, though, as to why Intel is keeping things tight still, if they are keeping it tight intentionally. Marco, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I don't think they're keeping it tight intentionally. I do think they're being really judicious about inventory with the impending wave of 10 nanometer stuff that's supposed to be coming. So they're not going to go make a whole bunch of 14 nanometer existing parts when they really want to sell next gen 10 nanometer parts. And if everything is on schedule, like Intel has said, they're going to want to push the new 10 nanometer stuff, which is coming, in the next few months. So, I think they want to toe that line. They want to make sure they can meet demand and obviously make some money, but they don't want to end up with a bunch of older 14 nanometer stuff on their hands when they want to push the 10 nanometer stuff. So was just chatting about that.
Yeah. I think it's a good theory. I think, as you are trying to meet demand and play catch up, I think it's a inventory management is a precarious, careful thing. And yeah, I think there's a lot of credibility, a lot of credence to that. Intel needs to do things right. There's nothing worse than overstuffing the channel when they're asking for it, and then transitioning to the next gen, and then all of a sudden, oops, now you get some deadwood, and you're talking about bill backs and all this different stuff. It gets ugly when that happens. So yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, and I think plays well for AMD. And like I said, I think we've seen a little bit, of a little bit of a sort of relaxing, if you will, of just receptiveness to the AMD brand and different models of products that perhaps historically haven't had that option. So are we getting some Chipetta children in the background now? Are we
Yeah,
we're gonna get the little munchkins?
I turned her away with the little 2-minute gesture, so hopefully I can hold her off until we finish.
Well, we get 7 minutes actually, but we'll be quick. It'll feel like 2, honest.
I'm Italian, so when you say 2 minutes, that's just slang for anywhere from 2 to 19 minutes.
That's it. It's the Italian goodbye. It lasts forever. Yeah, I hear that, exactly. Man. So yeah, let's talk about something I've got here, and I want to get what you guys think about this thing. I won't talk about it too much, but Hotter Than Hotmail at hotmail.com is asking about Alienware's Area-51 killer gaming desktop replacement notebook is what this thing is. They're calling it a laptop, but this thing is just insane, and I have it in for review right now. This is the Alienware Area-51. Let me pull it into the frame. Area-51m laptop. So you are looking at the first laptop that I've ever seen. Well, I guess probably not the first that I've ever seen, but it's one of the first that uses a full configuration of desktop components. So on board this thing, as I blow out my webcam, on board this thing is an Intel Core i9-9900K 8-core processor. Okay, desktop processor. Also on board this thing is an Nvidia GeForce RTX 2080 GPU. I think it's got 32 gigs of RAM. I'd have to look. It may be it can go up to 64. I either have 16 or 32 gigs. It's got dual SSDs, dual NVMe SSDs on board, to pair of terabyte SSDs. The thing is an absolute beast. And let me see if I can. Hang on a sec. I'm gonna reach way down deep here. This is hilarious. Hang on. I'll be right back. Hang on.
Hit Task Manager to check the RAM.
Yeah, I can do that, but it takes too much time. Yeah, thanks, John. He switches to the site. That was good. As I was reaching for these, see these are the 2 power bricks that power this thing. It takes two. One is a 330 watt power brick, big guy, and then this guy's I think it's a 180 watt brick. The thing is, so what you're thinking, why two? You actually plug two into the back of the machine for full power, and actually, at first Marco and I were like, why? That's so weird. Why would they do that? But it actually makes sense. This thing takes a lot of power, obviously. However, if you combine, so for full power, this thing takes what is this, 400 and 500 and 10 watts or 520 watts, something like that. For full power, if you combined both of these into one brick, you're talking about a massive power brick. Are you going to want to lug that around everywhere? Maybe not. So what you can do is you can bring the 330 brick, and it'll run actually game just fine, but maybe not 100% full tilt. And I want to take a look at the different performances with that, a secondary brick not connected, and see how it acts. But you can use it with one of the bricks on the go kind of thing, throw in the backpack, and they sent a big backpack to go with this, and it'll run. And then when you get back to the home base, you can plug in your second brick and have the full Monty, have all the juice. But like, this thing is just, it's cool. It's a cool machine. It's got a nice display. And that's another interesting a little bit of a caveat. Not super thin, but thin bezel display. This is a 1080p 144 hertz panel. Now, also another decision, design decision here that you can perhaps sort of, you can question why don't we have a 4K display and something like this that can obviously drive 4K. This thing will push, for example, I just ran some Far Cry 5 numbers. This thing will push 125, 130 frames per second, Far Cry 5, everything maxed out, even ultra high resolution textures, just maxed out. Is going to push, it'll push the 144 refresh rate of the panel. So you've got that. If you're a high refresh rate gamer, which these days, when you think about Fortnite and Apex Legends and all these guys, all those different battle royale style, people want high frame rates. It's an edge. It's a proven edge in those kind of games. So that's a popularity thing. The other thing to remember is you can hook this up. It's got HDMI and Thunderbolt out. You can hook this thing up to a secondary panel and drive your 4K from it when you get back. If you want to, it is a desktop replacement. It's every bit of a desktop. So you can drive a 4K panel, no problem with it, and have kind of the best of both worlds. You got high refresh rate, 1080p on the road, or a mobile semi. I'm holding it up with one hand. I don't know. I think it's 10 pounds. I have to look it up. But yeah. Or plug in a monitor and get you 4K that way. So, really cool.
8.5.
What's that? 8.5? Yeah. It's actually, it's lighter than it looks. I mean, it's a big machine. And they did a lot of work with magnesium alloy and aluminum in this thing to really lighten it up. But the other thing that's cool, and I don't know if I can, let me see if I can do it. So I turned it away from me. I'm going to turn it towards me. See if I can get it to wake back up. Come on. So yeah, I can't do it right now because I think it's wigging out with the camera. But this thing has Tobii eye tracking. So like literally you'll walk away from it, it'll go dim, and then you walk up next to it and it lights back up. And then when you fire up the Tobii app, you can see like it's tracking my eyeballs all over the screen. You have Tobii eye tracking for control in games, and it's fascinating technology. I was impressed just with the proximity wake up feature. It knows when you're in front of it. It's kind of freaking cool. It's a little bit of a gimmicky, but it's like, hey, it goes to sleep mode and then wakes up when you walk near it. But in gaming, there's lots of hooks for eye control, for panning and whatnot when you're gaming as well, which is really cool. I've actually used that as well. So it's got a lot of features, a lot of horsepower, and it's impressive. Let's see, we've got a comment in here. Mine arrives on the 21st with a 9700K 2080 and 16 gig of RAM. Can't wait for your review, but spill some beans about performance and thermals. Okay, so performance, I think I mentioned Actually, but before the end of the week, I'm gonna be traveling next week to GDC and Nvidia GTC. Before the end of this week, I'm gonna try and get some benchmarks done on it. And but right now, I'm seeing north of 120 frames per second in Far Cry 5 maxed out 1080p. It's fast. Noise is it can get loud. Does it get obnoxiously loud? No, and you have different performance profiles to dial in if you want to tame the fans down. It's not as loud as you would expect actually, but I'm still working with that. I just got it in the other day. Marco, what do you guys think? Marco, Chris, and we got to wrap up because I'm talking too much.
I think that is a really cool machine. I think the 1080p panel is a good idea. 1080p is perfectly acceptable in that size screen. And to get that higher refresh rate, you get a better experience on the desktop, plus the advantage in gaming, in terms of response time and just responsiveness overall. And with such a powerful GPU, it can actually take advantage of that panel. So I think that's, dare I say, well balanced. It was a good move, and having the 9900K in there, or even the desktop 9000 series Coffee Lakes, basically the best experience for single thread IPC with very strong multi-thread. So, and NVMe storage, you're basically looking at a fantastic computing experience across the board with that set of components. Leading edge feature set, strong single thread, strong multi-thread, high refresh rate gaming, leading edge GPU. It should do, I mean, the review's not done. It should do a lot of stuff right. The issue with the dual power supply is kind of funky, but I don't know. I mean, that's a good looking big machine based on what I'm seeing through the camera here.
Yeah. So and the camera doesn't do it justice. It's actually crunching Cinebench right now in the palm of my hand, but 1970 Cinebench points for the processor on board. It's unplugged now, so it's going to score less. But Chris, what do you think? And then we'll wrap on this thing. It's pretty freaking wild. I will say that.
Yeah, I mean, the two power supplies are tugging at my OCD just because I want them to be the same size. I get that you can power off the larger one and do most of what you want to do just fine, but I want them to be equal. But, that's just my oddness. It's a beautiful machine with the upgradable components. I really want to see how that pans out, especially for the GPU. Obviously, with the CPU, you can slot in another compatible chip and apply some thermal paste and be on your way. The GPU, we'll see how pricing ends up working out with those, especially over the long term. As you add generations, I think people are more likely to want to upgrade their GPU generation over generation than the CPU, because that's where you're going to get your bigger gains with gaming. So very cool from that perspective. Obviously, it's not the MXM form factor that we've had for a while, but
yeah.
What did you get on that Cinebench run?
1970.
So full desktop 9900K with liquid cooling only does 2076. So that's a really good score for a battery powered notebook.
Yeah. So let me just fire this thing up one more time, and then we'll go because I know John's going to go. But look, check this out. There's the lighting in the back. Really cool design signature. I mean, just a cool machine. Looks like a dang spaceship. It looks like the Starship Enterprise like leaving you with that. What is that? What do they call that drive? Anyways, cool stuff from the folks at Alienware. Stay tuned for our full review in the weeks ahead. Working on it now. I'm going to try and get a performance preview up before the end of the week. So stick with us at HotHardware.com, where you can find us on the web, YouTube.com/HotHardware, Twitter.com/HotHardware. And we're everywhere. And that about does it for this week. Next week, we may not be able to hit the Wednesday at 7 p.m. slot because I'm going to be traveling, but we'll see. Maybe we hit it on Friday. Any other words of wisdom before we part ways, gentlemen?
Come by the site tomorrow morning. We have news happening 9 a.m. Eastern.
That's right. Come by, check us out. We're always
assuming I get done, which is not a for this one. I have a lot to do, and I have 2 kids waiting to go to bed in the next room, a dog to walk. I'm tired. I have to eat. My wife's not home. So we'll see how this plays out. But come by the site tomorrow morning if you're optimistic. Stick around till the afternoon if you're pessimistic.
And with that, we'll let Marco stop whining and let him get back to work.
Say goodbye. I'm sorry.
It's all right. It's all right. It worked.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, let me rock,
sucker.
dude. I got the girl squeaking in the other room.
All right. Thanks,
All right,
John.
I'll see you
Thanks,
guys.
everybody.
See you guys later.
Thanks, Chris. Bye.
Bye.